you want more of the conventional wisdom on sales and growing revenue, this podcast isn't for you. Throw away your closing tactics, tricks, and tips and learn what the top 1% income earners do to create results. This is the OnPurpose Growth Podcast.
Hey, everybody. This is Bryan McDonald with the OnPurpose Growth Podcast. I appreciate everybody coming back and listening or watching. Today, I'm excited because I've got Brad McCrory of Accelerate on. And what we're going to talk about is a concept Brad has come up with called 8 count. And what 8 count is in my own words, it's a disease that most entrepreneurs have that they actually really don't know they have. And what that is avoiding success. So I'm really excited about talking about this topic and picking Brad's brain about this. So Brad, thanks for being on. And why don't you give a little bit of background about you, your business, and your entrepreneurial journey?
Oh, cool. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be here. So Brad McCrory, I started off, I would say my entrepreneurial journey really started when I was 12. I caddied at a country club, and if anybody's ever loved golf clubs on a golf course, you're exposed to a different kind of lifestyle pretty quickly. And, so I really learned the value of hard work and got to watch people that played golf 40 hours a week instead of being in an office 40 hours a week. So it got me to start thinking a little bit differently about what I wanted for my future. I started my career off in sales. From there, I've run multiple other tech companies, started one of the first iPhone app development companies, run a couple agencies, digital agencies along the way, and started Accelerate about 4.5 years ago. It's a digital consultancy. We service mid-market organizations that are typically $10 to $100 million in revenue, and we provide business consulting services as well as technology initiatives, websites, mobile applications, or large technology implementations, typically solving some type of a complex business challenge and using technology as a way to tackle that. So, it's a little bit about me, and again, thanks for having me on. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So that's quite a journey that you described there, Brad. And I can't imagine that it was all sunshine and roses. So, I mean, have you gone through any adversity to get to where you're at now?
Oh man, where do I start?
Right.
I just talked to San Diego State University's entrepreneurial program this morning, and I think one of the things I was talking to them about was just the value of process. As much as 20 to 23-year-olds that are starting their first company, and it really helped me reflect. And I think anybody who's been an entrepreneur for a period of time realizes that being an entrepreneur is 75% failure, 25% wins. And if you're just reliant on the wins, you don't really make it. You burn out, right? And so it's really learning how to value the process. But we've had some fun, and I say fun as in it's not fun for a lot of people, but along the way, I think a couple of years ago, I had a couple cars repossessed. Let's see here, we've been sued. That's always fun. Just I think anything that really could happen potentially that in starting a business likely has, to us to date, but. I think we've just learned that the bigger the adversity, the bigger the learning opportunity. And so yeah, I mean, it's been interesting. I'm happy to dive in deeper into any of those if you'd like, but we've had a few failures.
Well, how does that adversity and those failures dive into this 8 count? Because I'm positive there's got to be some type of link there.
So. One of the realizations, I'm not like, there's people that are like coaches and business coaches and consultants that have their stuff together, and that's not me. Everything that I've ever taught is from learning from my own stupidity. So I'm just gonna put that out there. It really was, I saw this culture of entrepreneurship and just life in general, where I think in today's society, when someone fails, when someone falls down, when somebody experiences some adversity, there's a common reaction. It's they look around to see who's looking, and they try to get up as quickly as possible and try to pretend like it never happened, and try to avoid the shame or the guilt that's, in our society associated with failing. And I think that's the biggest fundamental setback for entrepreneurship is the mindset that that for some reason that's a bad thing that you failed and there's not like a learning opportunity there. So the concept of 8 count is really, if you look at a boxing match and you look at somebody who is losing a fight and they get knocked down, if you get knocked down and you get up in a half a second, which is what typically people try to do, you typically get back up and you start stepping out the fight, and your probably vision's still a little bit blurred. You probably still got some cobwebs that you're trying to knock out. And I don't know about you, but every time I watch a boxing fight, I'm like, dude, you had 7 more seconds
Yeah, right.
to get your stuff together before you got back out in the ring. But entrepreneurs do that. They get up in the 1 count. And so the concept of 8 count is really understanding that failure is to be embraced and that there's a perfect amount of time to sit in failure, where you don't make failure final. You don't sit there too long for the knockout to be counted, but you embrace it and learn the lesson that needs to be learned so that you can move forward and win the next round. And I think a lot of times people get that second knockout in the same round because they just get up too early.
And what is it about that? Because I've noticed the same thing too, even in myself, right? I mean, I've had tons of failures as an entrepreneur, and it's this narrative that it's a narrative that creates a mindset of just get up and go real quick. What is it about that mindset that is hurting people? Like, let's dive deeper into that.
I was reflecting on this the other day, and I think that we go through phases of maturity as entrepreneurs. And I think I'm just getting to the second phase very recently. But I think the phases are, phase 1 level of maturity is, I don't want to fail. Phase 2 level of maturity is, I'm learning how to deal with failure, and I forget failure quickly. And it allows me to focus on moving from failure to failure and starting to develop some results and some success. Phase 3, which is kind of where I'm getting to now, and I'm excited to learn where phase 4 is eventually, but I think phase 3 is learning not to forget failure, but learning to compartmentalize failure and come back to it. So learning to put failure in a box, put it in the back of your mind, focus on the task at hand, and then revisit it when the time is right, so you pull the maximum amount of lessons from that failure. And that's really, I think, rooted in a deep understanding that, like, I'm a little, I'm a believer, and so like I feel like oftentimes those failures are a God-given opportunity for me to learn something and to sit in a process. And I mean, you hear a lot of these analogies, and I think one of the greatest tragedies today is that self-help and other kind of social media micro comment takes statements that have ridiculous gold and makes them cliche, but the reality is that a diamond has to go through a hardening process of coal to get to the point where it's a diamond, and there's the law of process applies to so many things. And I think entrepreneurs, just because of all the stress and the weight, have to go through this level of maturity of how they view failure and apply the law of process to failure. And frankly, I feel like most entrepreneurs get to the point where they just are good at forgetting it, but and I was doing this myself. I was missing the gold in the lessons learned. And I went back and started doing this podcast, and different podcasts I'm doing now, strictly because I realized that there were things that I failed in 3 or 4 years ago, and I did not get all the lessons from it, and it hurt. But like getting those lessons is critical.
Yeah, I agree there. It's obtaining the learning that you're supposed to get from it is key, right? Learning to learn. I think one of my mentors called it. But you're talking about something here, and I want to dive deeper into it because I don't want to let it go because it's powerful, and it's this the process. You keep referring to this process. Talk more about that.
It's interesting. Like I've learned that in being entrepreneurship and just in life in general that there's ups and downs in life. There's big successes and there's big valleys, but the successes and the valleys on the trend line are 10% of your life. And so if you're constantly focusing on 10% of your life, you're not enjoying the 90%.
Mm.
And so I had to learn how, when I was in the 90%, the nitty-gritty day-to-day, the meetings, the talking to people, the meeting new people, the pitches, the presentations, the delivery, the accounting, the finance, the operations, the struggle, good or bad, I just learned to embrace it all as good, and all as lesson is all as, and just to learn to make every moment and a labor of love. And I don't really, I'm not perfect at it by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's important. And I think the other thing that kind of just popped in my mind as you were kind of rephrasing that back to me is, I think the other kind of revelation that I have is that I think that entrepreneurs, as they start to grow, they get employees, they get customers, they get people that are looking up to them, family members, wife, kids, husband, kids. I think it's the fear of failures comes into play, but I think it's really a false strength. I think that we feel as entrepreneurs that we need to prove ourselves, and we need to be that strong person. And what I've found is that when I try to act strong, I appear weak. But when I try to embrace my weaknesses, I actually come across stronger. And I think that's one of the concepts that I think as entrepreneurs, if we flip that upside down, that we can lead more transparently, we can have better relationships with our employees, we can have better marriages and relationships with our kids. And I've screwed that one up forever, but that was just something in the last couple of weeks it's really kind of been on my heart is just being able to, as an entrepreneur, to get that heart out on your sleeve and leave it there and be okay with the ramifications.
Wow, man. Thank you for sharing that, because if that was the most powerful thing that people could hear when listening to this podcast. If people only take one thing, it's what you just described and what you've been pondering over, because the being vulnerable is one of the most powerful things you can do. And people always try to, like you say, act strong. And what they don't realize is they're showing the world, or the world interprets it as weak. And when they're admitting their weaknesses, they actually look powerful. That was phenomenal. Thank you for sharing that, man. So another thing you said, and I still want to tie back to this, is and what I just described, I think is there's this law of process that seems to be unavoidable. Am I correct?
It is, but it's funny because today's world tries to avoid it at all costs. I think that, I watch some of these, I could go on YouTube or Facebook ads right now and see any number of people that'll tell me that they can generate a 7-figure business in the last 4 months and why I should listen to them. But I think what people don't understand is, come show me where that person is 20 years from now. And life is a long game. And anything, if you're going to personally be able to handle something of weight, if you're going to own and run a $100 million organization or $50 million or whatever that goal is, you can't do it without preparation. I mean, there's never been a person in the face of the planet that has stepped into the calling that was on their life without proper preparation who didn't fail. And so, like, we somehow think we can cheat that. I do it all the time, right? It's like, now I'm 37 years old and I think I can hop on the treadmill for 20 minutes and lose 50 pounds. And it's like, but we do that in entrepreneurship. And it's like, the process is a process. And the greater your vision and calling is on your life, the tougher the process is. And we have to get to the point as individuals where we embrace that and are willing to understand, to pay the price regardless of what the cost is. And I think that that's one of the, again, misnomers that I see where people, are constantly like, it's like, it's January 3rd and they've done 3 workouts and it's a good analogy, and they're surprised they're not down 30 pounds yet. And they apply that type of mentality to entrepreneurship. And it's a little bit exciting because there's just not a lot of people that have the stamina. And so for the people that do, there's just a massive opportunity, but it's a little bit discouraging in that, it's really, really tough to see that people just are kind of buying into this. I'm going to go rent a Lamborghini and $1 million home and, generate $1 million business that will fall like a, deck of cards in 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. And there is no entrepreneurial hack. There is no life hack. There is no success hack. And for some reason, the world thinks there is. It's amazing, right? I think that's why the people with these, I made $1 million in 4 months, or, hey, look at me, I've got a Lamborghini, where they make money, and then they lose it because they never go through the process, right? It's short-lived.
Yeah. I love sports as an analogy. In the NFL, there's the phrase "any given Sunday."
Yep.
And it's because any given Sunday, any team is capable of beating any other team. But that phrase isn't any given season, because it requires the right process to produce the championship at the end of the season. Mm-hmm. And so the season and the process will weed out people that have gone through the right work and preparation to reach that end result. But if you're talented enough, you can win on a day. And so I think what people are missing today is the long game, and understand, like, there's a lack of vision for most entrepreneurs, where they're not thinking, or they want to be 10 years out, and because of it, they're making 2-year decisions.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. This all ties in too, because, going back to the embracing your failures, embracing where you're weak, how I've heard it is, your mess is your message, things like that, is that embracing the wall of the process, and embracing that you are going to fail is part of the whole equation, right? Being vulnerable is part of the whole equation.
Yeah, 100% is. And the level of vulnerability drives the level of transparency, which, from what I've found in the last year, like, it's probably the best way to really, the best analogy I've ever seen is when someone was explaining to me that, like, you can try to fake your emotions around your kids, but your kids are pretty smart and know what's going on anyways. Mm-hmm. And it's the same way when they're people in business. Like, we can try to pretend like we have it all together, but they know. They know we don't. They're just waiting for us to be transparent and real and relatable to walk through things with us. And I think I think you nailed it. I think it's a big thing that, as leaders, if we could feel, not, sloppy transparent, but I think people are looking for fresh, authentic leadership in today's marketplace.
And I think that's what it is. It's authenticity is the key, right? When you're authentic with yourself and true to yourself, you can be authentic and true to the rest of the world, and that's what people want.
That's great. Love it.
Right? And going back to what you were saying in regards to, people, your kids, or people can tell, what I find a lot of people miss is the fact that communication is only 15% language. The everything else, the other 85% is nonverbal. So it's not, you're communicating more with your body language, your mood, your gestures than you are with the words that you're saying. And that's why people pick those things up. They don't believe the words that's coming out of your mouth.
That's true, 100%. And I think it's more and more the case. it's more of, even from a verbal communication, it's more of what you're not saying than what you are saying. It's almost easier to understand where you're at by what you're omitting in communications than what you're actually speaking, on top of the body language and everything else. But it's 100% true.
Yeah. So, we've been talking about this, failure, embracing authenticity and things like that. One thing we haven't touched on yet is this concept of avoiding success. Talk to me more about that. Let's dive into that, because this is the really, really interesting part for me.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of self-reflection and starting to mentor folks the past couple of years. I really came to the realization, and I'm not the only person that has, but I did for me, because I'm a slow learner, right? that most people are not afraid of failure. They're afraid of succeeding. Most people are more afraid of what if I am successful? Am I going to be ready for it? And it's because most people are ignoring the law of process. It's if you've gone through the preparation and you're molded and ready, you're not afraid of success. But most people are just, they're just afraid of success, and it makes people get a little bit of results, but they never fully break through to their full potential, because it's the fear of, how do I handle this? What's going to go on? What are all the moving pieces? Less than, how do I win?
So is it people are you saying that you've experienced the fact that people don't want to change to be successful?
No, I don't think it's that they don't want to change. I think that most entrepreneurs deep down inside are scared to death of the weight that comes with the responsibility. And I mean, to be real, success reveals character. Success reveals integrity. And so most of us have a blind spot, an area in our life that we know we're not living up to our expectations on, that we haven't dealt with. And we understand that a certain success will bring that to light, and we're not ready to deal with it yet, because we're not ready to deal with our own problems. We're afraid of success.
So is it?
Sorry, I had to go there. Somebody on the audience needs called out, so I went there.
Yeah, no, that's great, man. That's called truth. So is it? And I guess that's where I'm going to go. Is it? People have to realize that they have to be truthful with themselves, or honest with themselves, for them to get to success.
Yeah, I think when I look at I'll give you a real example.
Got it.
I was afraid of being successful because I had never been good with my personal finances. And so add a couple $1 million of revenue into a business, and I was scared out of my mind what I would do with it. That fear was a mindset that I had to address, identify, and overcome, and replace with a mindset of capability and abundance before I could step into that place. And I think we all have that. And so that's like a very practical example. I think another example, just to kind of use myself as an example here, like I think I was afraid to be successful because I didn't know if I would do well with the attention, or I might, get an ego. I might, be attention heavy, or want, fame, or that's a pretty common promoted thing in entrepreneurship nowadays. And so until I understood that and dealt with the heart issue of that, and made sure there was a humility around where I was going, that limiting belief was going to keep me from stepping into success. And those are two examples, but I think there's 5 or 6 core ones that people just generally have some stuff going on that they are fine with where they're at, and they either don't know it's there because they put it into a blind spot, or they know it's there and realize that they are going to have to deal with. And so eventually success becomes more important than that one thing, and it gets dealt with, and then people step into it. But I think that's the biggest, people start to realize as entrepreneurs that there's a responsibility that comes with it. People look up to you. You're responsible for people's families. When you start having employees, you start having influence in the community. You start having customers looking out for you, and it becomes a point where you have to decide to evolve as a person and become the person that can lead all of that collectively, or you stop growing. And I think that's kind of the root of of the concept of people just being afraid of success more than they are failure.
So how did you work through this? How did you get to the awareness and kind of work through that? Because I think understanding that, or I don't know how much detail you can go into it or not, but I think understanding that would be really valuable to somebody listening.
Yeah. So this morning I poured a cup of coffee. Sorry. For me it was, and I'm not there. I think this is a continual thing that I think is a concept that, someone needs to dig deeper on, because I would say that there's levels, and, me at a $100 million company versus me at a $3 million company, there's probably 15 layers or 100 layers of this that need to be peeled away. But I think the biggest thing is just taking time to do self-reflection and understanding, if you're not achieving the goals that you want to achieve in business, that oftentimes it's not a product or a strategy issue, it's a self-reflection issue. And there's something inside of you as a leader that has to be rooted out and addressed for you to be ready for the next level. And I found oftentimes in life that when you take care of those things internally, they need to be taken care of, that next level is just added to you. And I think that's a continual process as an entrepreneur, that, show me somebody who doesn't address their personal things that are, kind of the next level for success. And I'll show you somebody that if their business starts to grow, they're going to be in trouble. It's a connected dynamic that has to be dealt with. But I think we as entrepreneurs, especially men entrepreneurs, we just don't like talking about that stuff or dealing with it. But it's real. I mean, that's to me, that's the game when you start getting some results in business is, what am I personally doing to sabotage my own success?
I like that. Do you think, so is there a difference between avoiding and sabotaging success?
I think they're the same. I think people avoid it because they're sabotaging it. I think the sabotaging comes from the self-realization and wanting to deal with it, right? The sabotaging is happening subconsciously, whether we know it or not. It's just we put the word sabotaging on it, and we actually want to identify it, call it something, and fix it.
That makes sense. So what it sounds like is when you are hitting some challenges in your business, and maybe you're taking a tactical approach in the business, or maybe a strategy in the business, and you keep running into a wall. It sounds like you have a trigger that says, after a while, if you keep running into the same wall, you're saying, hey, this isn't the business, this is me. I got to go internal. Is that what you're saying?
I think the biggest thing that will free up a lot of entrepreneurs is that you can revert, and this is I'm going to pause and then I'll let people soak this in, because this will set people free. Every failure you experience in business, you can reverse engineer back to yourself. I dig into something within my company and an employee did something wrong, or a project didn't go well, or something didn't happen. Every single thing, if I take the time to reverse engineer it, it comes back to a failure in my leadership that will point to something within me that I can improve.
Wow.
And when you get that cycle understood, and you don't beat yourself up about it, but you use it as a way to triangulate what's in a blind spot that you don't know about you that needs improved, and you start using that as a way to identify it and call it out and amplify it, then that to me is the point where as leaders we accelerate our growth to go to the next level. And this is a recent realization for me, but I've literally had times where I've dug into the organization, like, oh, there's an operations issue, and I'd be like frustrated with an employee, and I just feel, my conscience or my spirit just be like, check, look in the mirror. And I was able to stop and literally reverse engineer that back to an area within me that if that area, and this is the sentence every single time, if that area was operating at maximum health, this would not have happened.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Oh my gosh. That's some personal accountability and truth right there. Oh my gosh. So you couldn't have learned this yourself, right? You had to pick this up. Like, how do you learn these things, or have you had access to that's helped you understand this? I'm sure you're not picking this out of the sky.
A lot of this is, I call it self-realized, but it's really one foundational truth that I got taught by a mentor early on in business, and it was, if anything that happens in your business is someone else's fault, then you have zero control over your destiny. And so when I learned ownership, real ownership, and that anything within the purview of my hands is my fault, whether I'm touching it or not, whether I'm aware of it or not, whether I'm involved or not, when I really understood that, it sets you free. It's like, it's not a bad thing. It's just, when I'm responsible for it, it gives me everything's a learning lesson. Everything's an improvement. Everything's a reflection of myself. It's at the end of the day, that's what being an entrepreneur is. I feel like $100 million company is oftentimes, several leaders, but it's people that have grown themselves into leaders that project a certain level of characteristics and performance in an organization that comes through a process of self-growth. So I think it's, I developed some learning habits early on, and I seek mentorship. I read a ton of books. I screw up a ton. I learn from it. But I think the biggest thing was when somebody told me that the minute that you point a finger at someone else, there's four fingers pointing back at yourself.
Yeah.
That just unlocked it for me. It's like, okay, well, it's a lot easier sometimes to blame other people. It's a lot more productive to just take responsibility.
Oh yeah. The life hack is to blame other people, but the process is to go, personal accountability. I love it. So it sounds like you just embrace the journey, right? That this is just, it doesn't sound like your journey's going to end. I mean, do I hear that right?
I think that's the key, right? Is that like I mean, I grew up in the Midwest, I think, like you did. It's my parents' generation. It was how can I work really hard so I can retire and spend the end of my life relaxing and kind of stagnant and enjoying life, and I'm wired a little bit differently in that I feel like I need to enjoy the process now, and that there is no destination. I want to, but I think it's really how your view of the world, right? So I think many entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs because they want to leave the world a better place than when they got here. And I just look at it as a build up to my 60s, 70s, and 80s, that when I'm 70 years old, I still want to be in great shape with great energy with 70 years of wisdom, and have full confidence that I'll do my greatest works at 70, and then I'll do more at 80. And I think understanding the long game, and that, I'm not here to personally to acquire stuff. I mean, acquiring stuff's not that complicated. Go work hard, make money, go buy stuff. But I think having a purpose, woven within what you're trying to accomplish, will kind of align that drive. But it's definitely not a destination. I just getting to a point where you appreciate the process more every day, and you appreciate, and I'm learning this more and more. I mean, this by no stretch of the imagination perfect. I'm, probably 2% of the way there, but I think that's the perspective. I know a lot of people who think they're 98% of the way there that haven't even started yet. So I think it's the perception that allows you to position yourself to be on the journey.
Yeah, I've the way I learned, that in regards to what you were saying about people who think that they are 98% on the way there and they haven't even started versus you and your 2%, is that there's a distinction in society that people either have a fixed mindset or a learning mindset. And I would, your mindset is the learning is, hey, I got so much more to go, versus the person that thinks I've already got it all. And when you take a step back and you look at those two people, the one who, in my opinion, the one who says, I got a lot to learn, is the one who has more of what the world wants, versus the person who thinks they're 98% there. That person's the one that's typically struggling and not getting what they want in the world. So I think your mindset is phenomenal, right? Because you're open. I think that leads to your openness of doing the introspectiveness and being honest with yourself that you got to learn, right?
I love it. Yep, it makes perfect sense, and I agree. If you think you arrived, wow.
Yeah, right.
All I'm gonna say, wow.
Oh, it's true, and I laugh because I laugh I'll own it. I laugh, but I also get sad when I hear that. I meet other people like that because of how much they're actually missing. And I realized that if they had a different mindset, how much they could access and how much they could live. Because I feel that, people that think they arrived actually aren't living. They're just there, unfortunately. Right?
Makes sense.
Because my mindset is, hey, the journey is the learning, right? I'm just getting started, right? It's the process is phenomenal. Well, listen, Brad, I'm grateful you came on and shared this. This is a phenomenal conversation. I'm going to come back and listen to this myself because I learned something. I love having conversations like this. So why don't you share with everybody how they could follow you on the web or however. Why don't you share with everybody, please?
Cool, yeah. So I have a podcast, super easy to follow. You can just text the word EIGHTCOUNT, EIGHTCOUNT, to the phone number 619-432-3124, 619-432-3124. You get a reply back with a link to the podcast and Spotify, as well as you can text me there if you want to connect with me as well. You can follow me on Instagram at Brad McCrory. I'm pretty easy to follow on LinkedIn as well. But yeah, thanks for having me on the show. I'm going to go back and listen to it as well. You pulled some stuff out of me that I've never heard myself say before. So I'm excited to go listen to it myself.
Oh, awesome, man. Yeah, that's great. I love pulling things out of people because it serves us as well as the listener. So I'm grateful for you sharing everything. And everybody, if you didn't get to write down the number and how to get a hold of Brad and get access to Brad, we are going to be sharing that below the podcast or any site that this is published on. So don't worry, just check out the site or look below the video or the audio, and you'll be able to access that. And we'll see you next time. This is Bryan McDonald from OnPurpose Growth of the OnPurpose Growth Podcast. Checking out, and we're grateful for everybody. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the OnPurpose Growth Podcast. Let us know what you thought in the comment section. For more from OnPurpose Growth, go to onpurposogrowth.com. Subscribe here at BLTV for all of our content, including the daily Learn About Law podcast, Seize Your Business, Making Real Estate Fun, and Logical Logistics podcast, brought to you by O'Flaherty Law. Thanks for listening.